Hello everyone and welcome to AEW Discussion. I'm your host of AEW Enthusiast Dougie Doug, and today's episode we're going to be discussing Dynamite, May 24th, 2023 episode. And this episode of Dynamite, well, it was the go-home episode of Dynamite before Double or Nothing. And, well, this episode of Dynamite fell flat, like the NXT episode on Tuesday night. Well, NXT failed to put together a show that created interest in Battlegrounds. Dynamite also failed to put together an episode that created some interest in Double or Nothing. Instead, it's going to be up to the talent on Sunday night to deliver, which I'm sure they will. And with that, we're going to get right into the action, starting with the four pillars, speaking ahead of Double or Nothing. So if there's any match on the Double or Nothing card that should have been built better, or been better built, it is the Fatal 4-Way for the AEW World Championship. Not only is the content in the build underwhelming, but it has put the three challengers in a position to try and verbally spar with MJF, something they simply cannot do. That's not a shot at them. MJF is just simply on another level on the mic, and there are very few that can match him. Especially when he is motivated and cuts a promo, the likes of which he did here. He brought back to the forefront the possibility that he could leave AEW at the conclusion of his contract. That one promo here was more intriguing than anything that has gone on over the course of this feud. And thank you, MJF, for showing up to this episode of Dynamite and finally giving this episode a segment that was, well, a hit. Because everything else to that point, well, I mean, that contract signing was a miss. But everything else is kind of meh. Nothing really special about it whatsoever. So, thank you, MJF. And the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championship match to close out the show, Lucha Brothers versus Blackpool Combat Club. So, the match itself lived up to expectations based on the talent involved. Great match it was between these two teams. But as the final hype for Anarchy in the arena, it fell flat. Matt and Nick Jackson would cost the challengers the match, but there was no appearance of Kenny Omega or Hangman Page, and also John Moxley got another one of his generic Blood and Guts promos, which kind of led to a rather dull conclusion for the show. For a match that is a selling point of Sunday's pay-per-view, it should have gotten a stronger sell. Unlike the end of last week's show, which created interest in the match, this one did the opposite. So the build, so Double or Nothing, it has not been a well-built pay-per-view. There's just been a lack of urgency with rushed booking and sometimes nonsensical decisions, like including Sabu in the unsanctioned match between Jericho and Cole. No disrespect to Sabu, but from a logic standpoint, it makes zero sense why he is involved right there. All of those things were on display this week with a show that felt more like, well, it felt more like the show you would book and put out there on air in between pay-per-views, right? Like when you don't have a pay-per-view 4 days away. Rather, it's like something that you have a pay-per-view 3 months away or something like that, right? Like, this is not the kind of show you put out 4 days before a pay-per-view, or at least you wouldn't think you would. But nonetheless, that's what Tony Khan did. Some of the segments certainly probably did fall flatter than he may have envisioned when he booked them. So overall, the show was a miss, with everything coming across just slightly off, lacking the spark necessary to leave an impression ahead of one of the biggest shows of the year for AEW. With that said, still an impressive card that Tony Khan booked. 9 matches so far. Hopefully it stays like that, and nothing else gets added onto it, or at least if it does, it gets done before the pay-per-view. Because to be honest, I do not want to spend, if I can keep it between like 3 and 3.5 hours, that is ideal for a pay-per-view. Even over 3.5 hours is fine, but I'm not thinking this pay-per-view will push 4 hours, but I've known AEW pay-per-views that have done that before, and it is absolutely brutal. So hopefully time-wise this thing, hopefully the matches don't suffer time-wise, but hopefully this pay-per-view is booked well enough and the matches are given solid time to where the pay-per-view can still end in that like 3 to 4 hour window, but not make it feel like you're rushing through everything. So we'll see how that gets booked. And given again the card that's been put together and the talent that is going to be appearing on it, yeah, I think the pay-per-view will certainly, it will certainly generate some buys based on that, the card and the talent that's appearing, which, isn't surprising too. Talent can sell a card like Chris Jericho versus Adam Cole. That's a solid matchup right there. Would be nice if it was a one-on-one matchup, but I guess AEW. I'm not against the unsanctioned match in the way it does make sense given how personal it started between those, given how personal a gap between those two. Anarchy and Arena, not going to be for the fan of heart, but violent chaos. Violent chaos is a staple of the company, so it's not surprising that they're going there with that type of matchup. Not surprising that they're going there with that type of. Not surprising that they're going there with So, violent chaos is a staple of the company. Lost my train of thought. I had no idea where I was going with that. AEW World Championship match will be the best part of the entire feud. As the promos, well, they simply just did not hold up in terms of trying to sell this match. Not that all three of those guys were bad, but when you're comparing them to MJF, well, there is no comparison. So instead, the other three, along with MJF, will step in the ring and do what they do best, and that is just compete, putting on a show with the top prize in the company at stake. So I talked about the card and the talent selling the pay-per-view itself, and I think the fans who order Double or Nothing will be able to enjoy what should be a great, will be a great night of in-ring action, as most of these AEW pay-per-views tend to be. It would just be nice if the booking ahead of the matches themselves was better, instead of relying on talent alone to sell the card. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode of AEW Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.